Hello everybody, Catmatt here. This is going to be the first part of a series of videos that I've always wanted to kind of do. Um, a big problem in the catfish world right now, which I will get to way later on in these videos, is, how judgmental people are without even knowing people, or for knowing people a very short a time. I mean, it's gotten horrible. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about is, I put up a post and asked, people for some questions and some things that I could kind of refer to as I was doing these videos. And first of all, thank you for all the response, because there was some freaking awesome questions, really cool questions. So I'm glad I have them. I wrote some of them down on well, actually Michelle wrote them down on index cards for me to kind of refer to throughout me making these videos. I don't think that I'm Kevin Van Dam because I'm making this video. I just decided to make a video because I thought it would be kind of neat to, with the way the catfish world has just exploded on the internet with Facebook and stuff. A lot of these people, are very misguided on, the word legendary gets thrown around with some guys and this and that. And, guys that weren't around, 12, 15, 18 years ago. And that's all fine and dandy because, when you get on the internet and you see things and, there's a lot of mimicry that goes on and a lot of copying and a lot of this. But again, that kind of stuff has to happen because there's only so much you can do with catfishing, or any kind of fishing, that is, to build your own name or your own brand, so to speak. But I kind of wanted to get started talking about myself and what where and when I started catfishing. And I live obviously in Northwest Illinois. We only have about a 7-8 month actual growing season or quality season to catch catfish. We never had a lot of good places to ice fish, even though we did a little bit of it for catfish, but most of the ice fishing here was not done for catfishing. But I spent my childhood, and I can even have some memories, but I do have some old pictures, before I could remember, 2, 3, 4 years old, camping, and Dad taking me to the creek, and wading me across places, letting me play on sandbars and carry minnow buckets and things when I was just, because Dad back then, they ran some throw lines and bank poles and stuff. And Dad worked full-time jobs, so his idea of fishing, and a lot of the fishing that went on back then was more for eating. There wasn't a lot of trophy fishing back then. A lot of it was done because people were feeding their families that way, etc. And this is way back in the mid 70s. So that's kind of what catfishing was back then. That's all catfishing really was back then. That's all it was thought of, was something you go to do, and you keep fish and you eat fish. And I kind of graduated from that at about 6 years old. I had a couple of rod and reels that I had gotten for birthdays and Christmases or whatnot, and I started wanting Dad to leave me back on the sandbars with my rod and reels while he ran lines and did things. And I caught my first channel cat. I can remember it clear as a bell, with a Zebco 202. It was brown, and the rod was propped up against a limb. And I remember sitting there and watching the rod kind of start to bend over, and finally bend over, and the reel start to lift off to the ground when I got it. And I think it was a 3 or 4 pound channel cat, which at that time seemed like a 25 pound. It looked gigantic. Like there was no way to put label it. It was like, a little kid that hadn't handled many fish in his life, and all of a sudden I'm looking at this fish that's really, like, say, 3 or 4 pounds, if I remember correctly. But to me it was like, man, fish this big. I thought that was just things you seen on TV from people that went to oceans and big rivers and stuff, because I was just a little kid. So And that first fish lit a fire in me as far as transitioning from, the bank poles and throw lines are something I did for years as a kid. But there was always rod and reels involved from that time on. For the next 10, 15 years, there was always rod and reels involved. Yes, I spent thousands and thousands of hours and calendar days. I don't even know how many days to put on it. And there's a lot of people that can testify to this. All I wanted to do when I was free, whether it was the summer or whether it was weekends during school year, is I camped under bridges. Obviously, there wasn't the safety issues that we have nowadays with kids getting abducted and all the dumb stuff we have that goes on in society now. So I spent all my time camping under bridges on the Elkhorn Creek, Rock River, I would run some bank poles and throw lines, and in between I would get fresh bait and I would rod and reel fish. And sometimes we slept, sometimes we didn't. I wore out a bunch of friends doing that. If one couldn't go, I'd find another one, and if they couldn't go, I'd go by myself. Mom and Dad, and I know Mom would worry, and she'd sit at home and she'd cook dinner for me, and Dad would run out and he'd check all the bridges for me, and he'd yell over the bridges till he'd find me, and Mom would deliver food on a plate wrapped in aluminum foil, and she was always worried about her boy. And there was a lot of nights that me and friends would just, we'd catch some channel cats and we'd skin them and gut them and behead them, and we would run clothes hangers through them, and we would rotisserie them over campfires, and we would just eat them off the bone with our fingers. We did that a lot. I have an old friend of mine, Kelly Dietz, that spent hundreds of hours with me camping, and he still to this day won't eat hot dogs because we ate so many hot dogs camping when we were young that he literally he gets physically ill now when he sees a hot dog. So he still don't eat hot dogs. But those were great times back then. Things were simple. You learned how to find catfish by looking at the water, wading in the water, reading the surface of the water. You found brush piles, if you could see them, or if you were walking through the creeks or along the riverbanks and you stumbled on stuff, obviously those were our legs, were kind of our legs and eyes, those were depth finders. That's how we found everything. But the days that I spent on the Elkhorn Creek and the Rock River as a little kid were all the days that I was building the foundation of the things. And now when programs like Babe Winkleman and the Catfisherman and what else was Virgil Ward, and I can't even remember some of the old time shows, but those, when I started seeing those, I knew as a kid, even at a young kid at 10, 12, I used to talk to my friends, I need to get a camera, man. I want to have my own fishing show. I want to do this. And then I started my own form of noodling, where we used to get the minnows that come in shallow at night, and that's where we'd seine our minnows. And I would start, on good moonlit nights, you could stand in there with the minnows and you would see the bigger outlines of channel cats and stuff coming in behind the minnows, and we would, actually caught some by hand that way. And it's just really cool. So many great memories as a kid. Like I said, when things were simple, we had boats, and we used boats to, the Sugar Creek and the Kickapoo Creek and some of the other small creeks in Illinois we used to navigate, but we never had depth finders. Again, this is all pre-internet stuff, so all pre-90s, all pre-mid 90s stuff through high school, junior high, and when I was a little kid. So I was asked a question. See, what was one of those questions that I wanted to answer? I got some of them cards there. Where were the rivers and lakes you ran as a kid? I think I've kind of covered that. You know, the Elkhorn and the Rock were the main two, but we did a little on the Mississippi, the Sugar Creek, the Kickapoo Creek, in central Illinois. A little bit of Mississippi River fishing, but not much. There's a little lake here called Rockwood State Park that has some catfish in it. I catfished that a little bit as a kid. And Lake Taylorville in southern Illinois, fished that quite a bit. The family had big get-togethers there every summer, more than once some summers, so I fished that a lot. So those were kind of the places I got started as a little kid. Another question that I got that kind of fits into this time was, when was the point in your life you came to realize this is what you want to dedicate your life to? That's kind of a broad question, but as a kid, when I seen the rod and reel double over for the first time at 6 years old, I didn't know necessarily 100% that that's what I wanted to dedicate my whole life to. All I knew at that point was I wasn't ever going to stop doing that, and I wanted to learn more about it. And you know, I'd have rather done that every day than go to school for sure. But did you have a mentor or guide that taught you to catfish or guide? If so, do you believe you paid it back to the catfishing world? I did have a mentor. That was my dad. Obviously, Dad took time to take me all the time because I'd cry and scream like a baby. I remember that he'd try to leave that house without me to go fishing or squirrel hunting or deer hunting or anything. I mean, I wanted to be outside, not just with fishing, like I said, with hunting too, but he was my mentor. The second half of that question I'll answer later. So this video here I kind of wanted to just do as an introduction as to who I am, where I started, what started the fire for me. I'm going to do a lot more of these. Obviously I can't do them all in one video, so I'm going to upload some, and I appreciate again all the questions, and please, you know, if you're interested in what I've done and how I've got where I've come, and you ask some of these questions, and watch the next parts as they come out. I'm gonna end part one here, and you know, the next part will kind of start up with, you know, towards the end of school and the internet coming on and how all that got started. So thanks for watching part one, and we'll see you soon for part two.